Report.
Beautiful.
Great. All right. I'm gonna call the meeting to order. Review of the agenda.
I do have one question on the agenda. Can we move the third version of the fiscal year 24 budget proposal discussion to the health administrator report?
Can we move the the
Unfinished
24
business third version,
and move it
fiscal
to
year
yours?
24, and move it to the health administrator report.
Sure.
I think
I think so.
it dovetails nicely with
Okay.
my report and all of that, so.
Okay,
Do we need a motion?
I guess.
I'll make that motion.
A second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
No one opposed.
Is Brandon here?
I do not see Brandon in the waiting room.
Okay.
He said he would be participating, but it looks like he is not.
We're a punctual group.
Yep. He's away on business.
Yeah, I
He's out
can
of town.
sympathize. Approval of March 10th meeting minutes. Is there a motion? Actually, sorry, excuse me. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I move we accept the minute.
I'll second.
All those in favor, oh, sorry, discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. All right, thank you, everybody. Sorry, I didn't get in until midnight last night, so I'm
Brand book.
a little bit, so bear with me, guys. All right, unfinished business, updated vacancies.
So I can talk about it. I have not posted the peer recovery coach yet, but I have posted the social worker again. We only had one applicant in the last go around. It was the same applicant we've had the previous two times, who we have interviewed before, so.
Okay.
But I do think we'll see what happens. I think that we could probably fill both of them as we get closer to the end of the school year and things like that.
I see.
Did you forget the public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't think there's anybody up there, so. It's just one participant, which is us, right? Yeah, there's. So anybody for public comment? No, we shall move on.
Good catch.
Thank you, Ann. Told you it was foggy this morning. Okay, so we'll move your budget proposal down, so we'll head over to new business, clinical fees.
So we talked about this last time about for clinical, raising the fee on one of our services and then taking the fee from a no charge fee to a nominal fee to help cover some basic costs for services that we were providing on a semi-regular basis. So you guys all have the paperwork in your packets. It's the request for clinical services price increase page. And we discussed it last time, so it's up to you. It's
Does
up
that
for
have to
discussion.
require a 30-day, we have to do a 30-day notice?
No, I don't think so. I don't think,
For clinical.
not for clinical, I don't think so for clinical fees. I'm pretty sure we don't have to. We've raised them before in the past without any notice, but for environmental permitting and stuff like
It
that,
does.
definitely,
Got
yes.
it, okay. All right, so are you looking for a motion to accept this?
Yes, I was just looking for a motion to accept the increases in fees.
I move we increase the clinical service fees as listed.
All those, sorry.
Second.
Thank you. All, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Noticed.
It's not a moneymaker, but it'll cover some costs.
Okay, where are we next? Fox holiday, Charlie.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So we have the February 2023 financial report and the March 2023. And so first for February of 2023, we have the reserve requirements. You'll see that this calculation shows that we are not in compliance with the reserve requirements at this time. However, please note that it still says unreconciled bank balance. So we have been working really hard to get the bank recs complete, but we have hundreds up to 1,000 very small transactions that have to be entered. So it's just taking a lot of time to get those into QuickBooks.
Yep.
I think once we have all those in, we are going to be in compliance with the reserve requirements. The bank balance is well over $400,000 for the bank statement.
Let me give a quick little bit of context around this. So to make sure that we build all all of the vaccination events that we held in 2022. I did hire a medical billing company to make sure that they didn't expire. And all of that has come in, but we have to reconcile each one. It's a $30 or $40 input, and there's probably over 1,000 of them, so it's taking time. They're working their way, the staff is working their way through it, but it's not something that happens quickly when you're going
Right.
one at a time at $30 and it's $16,000.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What you guys gonna do if people don't pay, cause it's been like years? If
We
you
have to
send
write
it to
that off.
collect,
Yes, we would have to write that off. That's.
but you
yes.
don't send
We
it to
don't
a
send the
credit
collections, no. We don't send
Not
the
for
collections.
$30.
Not for $30 or $40, not at
And,
all.
and those were actually, we could, for the.
These are ones we
COVID
have
we were
billed.
we were not permitted to charge the individual, the insurance company could be charged.
Right,
But,
right.
we're forbidden to get money from the individual.
Correct. And this has all been billed and it's money received. It's actually in the bank account. It just hasn't been reconciled into QuickBooks yet. That's all. And it just takes time to
Do you
do
think
this.
it'll be about a month,
Yeah, I'm hoping to have it.
like next month?
Yeah, I'm hoping to have it by the end of this month. So the preliminary April numbers will have it. I'm pretty sure. They're working on it as we speak.
How much, on a percentage basis, what do you think the cost is to hire the billing company to do?
Oh, less than 7%.
7%.
And only collected. It's only uncollected,
Okay.
so. It was well worth it. We would have lost those. They would have run out after 6 months or a year.
Oh, I see.
And
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure we captured them before they disappeared. And it turned out to be about 35, what do you think? About $35,000.
Yeah, I think we.
So that we were able to get
Significant
and
amount.
surrendering roughly 7.5%, I thought was well worth it. To not lose that 35,000.
So that was a big influx in February, that we're still just trying.
And now a lot of that's been reconciled, but there's still about a little over half of that 35,000 still to be reconciled.
So that was a special case.
A special
It will
case.
Not be what happens with
No.
daily, activities.
So we have an option right
Got it.
now, I mean, with that still being unreconciled, so we can either. Accept it, knowing we're 12,000 out of compliance with reserve, we still obviously have a very healthy reserve. So we can either vote to approve these or accept these, or we could always delay accepting them until we have the final numbers
I
by
think
30
it's
days.
related.
You can do that.
Well,
The numbers don't really change. It just gets
Right.
adjusted as we move forward.
Right,
The
but you-
February numbers really
Exactly.
were not gonna change.
Right.
That's what they are.
Yes,
this is what it is, yeah.
basically, we're gonna be switching from the accounts receivable account to the cash account.
Right.
Right.
But I'm
So-
uncomfortable approve anything that I don't see it in black and white, so, a lot of time people say, this is it, and then it's come back, it's like way different.
Once you have a period that's in the books, you can't really
Right.
go back and change it.
Right.
It
This
is
is,
what it is.
this is the black and white
Right.
Yeah.
for February.
It
If,
is.
This
the
is the final.
numbers will change
Yeah.
in another month. I see no
So you-
reason not to approve
Okay.
it as it is.
So you wanna approve it with the,
Well, providing there's no other questions about other aspects of this,
I just want to be clear, just make sure we're all on the same page, so your P and L is gonna look the
Back.
same. What's gonna change is your accounts receivable is gonna go down and your cash balance is gonna go up, and that will be different in February. So that's gonna be the change in what the February
Right.
report's gonna look like.
Right, and that's why I'm saying, do we delay it? by 30 days?
especially since, if you're talking about you're just moving an asset from one category
Correct.
to the
Correct.
other, and for the purposes of the reserve account,
let's look
We-
back. right?
That's why I'm saying.
we
like,
look
have
at
to
the
be
cash.
choices. Yeah,
Yeah, well,
personally, I don't think it's a big deal, but
I don't either. And so I think, first of all, why don't you give the complete report? And then we can then vote on,
that's fine. Yeah.
okay,
So next is the financial summary. So for February, there was revenue of $100,000. We reduced that by salaries and wages of almost $82,000 and then operating expenses of approximately $16,000. leaving us a surplus for February of $10,800. Fiscal year to date, so through February of 2023, revenue of $740,000. Salary, we're gonna reduce that by salaries and wages of $671,000, and operating expenses of $232,000, leaving us a deficit at the end of February of $163,000. As far as revenue, revenue is about 18% below what is budgeted, and that's expected this time of year. And salaries and wages was 11% less than what we budgeted. Operating expenses was about 20% above what was budgeted, and that was basically due to increased travel and vaccine expenses. Accounts receivable as of February 2023, we had $252,000. $185,000 of that is West Virginia Treasury receivables. Everything else, about $67,000, just very small amounts. We should be seeing that decrease over the next couple of months. I do want to go to the very last page of this report, and it has your profit and loss prior year comparison. So net income as of February 2023, we have $163,000 deficit. And then we had a deficit as of February 2022 of $202,000. So a little bit better than we were performing last year.
A lot better, actually.
Yeah. And then
30% better.
that concludes February of 2023.
Wow. That's actually all good news.
Would you like to do a motion?
I would. I like to make the motion to approve these as is.
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
I abstain.
Let the record reflect. Now we're going into March, right? March, preliminary, preliminary.
All right, March 2023, 75% of the way through the year. We're still showing that we're not within the reserve requirements by about $4,500. Again, as we get everything cleaned up, I expect that to go away. And we'll have a surplus there. Financial summary for the month, March, just for the month of March, we had revenue of almost $276,000. Reduced that by salaries and wages of $47,200 and operating expenses of $19,000 gives us a surplus for the month of March of $170,000.
Which catches us up year to date.
It does.
Awesome.
Yes.
Can I see that? Or the March?
This is one.
So we're there. Yeah, no, I don't have it in here.
Yeah, take a look. There it is.
Thank you.
And
Yeah,
then
I'll put it for you.
for year to date through March of 2023, we have revenue of $1 million, reduced by salaries and wages of $758,000 and operating expenses of $251,000 gives us a surplus through March of $6,800. And I'm kind of gonna jump around a little bit here. So if you look at the last page, you have your prior year, current year comparison. So we have a surplus as of March 2023 of $6,800. Last year at this time, we had a deficit of $237,000.
Sorry, we're at the last page.
Hmm?
Are we at the last page?
Yes.
Sorry, we're a little behind here. Okay.
So right now, we are performing $244,000 better than last year at this time.
Wow.
Nice.
Great job.
Yeah.
What are we attributing that to? Still strong on the environmental?
Hadn't even billed permits yet. That's
That's
in
not
there.
even.
That's not even the
Right.
roughly $140,000 in permitting that we're probably expected to receive in the next
I
2 months.
suspect it has something to do with the
What did you
grant.
say?
Mhm.
Yeah, we're doing fine. Actually.
Is it the grants? We are,
There's a lot of things that have gone well for us. I don't want to take too much credit because the staff takes a lot of credit. But my ability to budget, my ability to understand the finances, it's taken about a year for me to get up to speed on that, and that's helped. But let's give credit where credit's due. It's the staff. We're doing a good job. Gillian's doing a great job. She's got an efficient staff. If you don't know Savannah, she's one of our sanitarians. She's I believe our restaurant inspector. So we were able to get out in the open, get out in the public, be seen, all those types of things. But yes, it doesn't hurt to have some grants and make sure that you use them in an efficient and effective manner. That's helpful. And I think there's a lot of luck too. Growing community and all those types of things.
Unlike the last 2 years where the COVID related grants were absolutely the reason that kept our head above water. This still contributed, but more of it is diversification.
Yep.
And the food grant, that helps, 30,000 here, 30,000 there adds up.
And also, it's also knowledge of when the grant that Dr. Reedy wrote, he made sure that we hit the most important cost, which is almost always personnel. And those are the things that we've learned, and he's learned, and I've learned, that we make sure that we defray the cost of our staff's time, and that's been an effective way to make sure that our staff's time is properly compensated through these grants.
You've also had more stability in staff too, it seems like.
Much
You haven't
more
had
stability.
so much turnover.
It's getting better, yeah.
Much better staff, much better staff.
Don't go anywhere, Savannah.
That goes to making sure we pay them well, provide a safe, comfortable, productive environment for them to come to work in. And I'll be honest, one of the first things I checked when I came here was leave balances. And everybody now has leave balance that didn't have leave balances when I began.
And having a balanced budget, of course, is
Balanced
essential.
budget's
but
huge.
the bigger thing to me, and I think to Gillian, is that the services on the environmental and clinical side, those are we're confident that we can provide them each week, whereas before the staffing, it was really hard to know. So the staff's what's doing it.
Nathan, so.
Yeah, let's give credit to where it is, the people doing the work on the day-to-day basis.
Great.
The staff's doing a great job,
Thank you for the leadership.
doing my best. You figuring it out yet? Go to full screen. And make sure that you click that one over.
Nathan is here.
Yeah, Nathan is here.
Hi, Nathan.
All right, anything else on that?
Just receivables real quick.
Hey, man, what's up?
Receivable balance at the end of March, $475,000. Of that, 317 is West Virginia's treasury, that's 67%. Everything else is less than 10%, individually. Then a side note, and I'm hoping I'm not taking anything away from Gina's report, but
No.
in April, between state aid and grants, we've received about $200,000. So just heads up what might be coming next meeting.
Yep.
So we're actually running almost double than what even the full month of February was. And tracking with March.
Correct.
We're well within budgeted amounts too.
Right. We don't need to do a motion on that, right? Because
It's preliminary.
yeah, it's preliminary. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having
Thanks,
me.
Charlie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Great job as always.
That's another one that's not allowed to leave.
Huh?
You're not allowed to leave either.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm
No,
encouraging.
I mean, the meeting, you can leave the meeting.
I'm encouraging.
No, you're not. He's so serious. It's like, okay. Messing with accountants.
Yeah.
Just let it roll.
Yeah. Super fun.
Indeed. Lawyers and accountants, they're
Yeah.
the most fun to be around.
Engineer. I get to mess with engineers at work.
Oh,
Thank you.
Oh, it's hilarious. And I joke with them, they just kind of stare at me. I'm like, I'm joking.
Relax.
It's all right. It's all good.
That's
Um,
things to an engineer. Look at lines there.
Trying to be fun.
Right.
Yeah,
I don't think the calculation works.
right.
All right, I guess we'll move into agency activity report.
We'll give Gillian a chance to do her thing.
We're having, something's wrong with the link, people are having trouble logging on, so Nathan's
Oh.
on now, we're resending the link to, Tim Cook would like to log on, so I'm trying to.
Okay.
send the link. So I don't know if that's.
A lot of the time I have to actually punch in the number to
Yes,
the app.
and manually add it
So one thing to think about is whether we should change to
to Google Meet.
the Google Meets, because that's provided free for us now.
Yeah, it's provided by the state, and actually, I find it to be
Is it
in
better?
many ways to be as good, if not better, and easier for people to get into if we're trying to be as
Then-
public as
Do we
possible.
have to
Does
pay
Zoom-
for Zoom?
We do pay for Zoom.
Not
We
much.
do, it's not
It's like
expensive.
15 bucks a
but
month or
Yes, it's like, it's less than $200 a year or something like that. So it's not a huge amount of money, but I find that the Google Meet is much easier to use because most people are using Gmail and things like that, so they have easy access to it. Because Gmail is the largest,
Right.
email provider.
I have two identical HP laptops. One of them cannot get into Microsoft Teams and the other can't get into Zoom.
So he just.
So they both get into Google Meet.
One of them gets into either, you know what I mean? It's the weirdest thing.
It's,
I can't, you know, it's.
all the old Luddites, they would say something like,
Still
it goes to the
very
machine or
suggestive.
something like that.
I'm a Luddite.
We'll just take a pause here.
The Luddite movement.
Right.
Where is Mason?
On vacation.
All right,
Spring break.
just wanted to make sure that nothing else was.
I knew there would be a problem.
So we're.
No, it's not when
Spring break is.
Mason's here, it's almost never a problem. We've been doing it enough now, it's smooth.
Shut
for
it
him.
down.
You're
People just got out of control.
Where's this?
too much fun.
Down in Florida, down in like Lauderdale and stuff like that. Of course, now they've got 25 inches of rain down.
Well, they ran spring break out of Panama City, because that used to be the big place, and then people kind of ran them out of there.
And Daytona Beach.
And then, yeah, I
Yeah.
kind of went to, I guess, Fort Lauderdale now.
Oh my gosh, my friend vacation down in Destin. It's so beautiful. Yeah, I'm like, okay, there's another destination I need to go.
My father-in-law lived.
That's
From
been a
from
destination.
It's
Destination.
I like that.
I think this might be the wrong link on here, but I'm not sure.
Then that means
Because
we
I-
signed into the
did you-
wrong, we signed into the wrong
No,
meeting,
it's Jefferson LHD and it was the Board of Health meeting,
scheduled one.
right?
Okay.
But I'm just saying that I think possibly, I think we had to create a new set of meetings. Had
Oh,
you
the other
done
day?
that recently? Created a new set of meetings or no? I don't know.
We haven't
So
done,
the
we
link-
made no changes at all.
The
for
link's
this.
not working for.
That
But we're
happens.
still, we were still recording, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
it'll still be available
It'll be up
for
on
the
YouTube
public.
Right.
On Monday, so.
Okay.
I'll post it on Monday like I usually do. It happens, sorry. Can come in.
Okay, well, we can proceed then, I think.
Yep.
All right, agency report, environment.
Me first, okay.
Yep, you're first now.
All right, so, looks like there were approximately 139 inspections, site visits and plan reviews done last month. Patty is currently working on billing for all the permits. She was only able to start this week, so we should start bringing in the revenue from that.
Which
You're
report is
seeing-
that on? Is that on the department activity report?
Yes, the activity report. For-
I'm not
for
seeing
the-
the report.
It's
Either.
in that. It's in that your papers.
Yeah, I've got it up here
It's
on
in
the
this
screen.
I don't see the number 139.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Oh,
not seeing.
no, I've added everything up.
Oh.
So that's like the
Oh.
total
Oh,
of
okay.
everything. So instead of going through each individual
Oh,
number,
okay.
I just kind of total it up every month.
Cool.
Got it, thank you.
Yeah,
Are the fees actually due on June 1st or July 1st?
there, well, it's no later than June 30th, I think. It had 10 days you get a 10-day grace period and then late fees are assessed. So
Okay.
after July 10th, late fees are assessed for those. So Patty's working on invoicing, and we have a new, with the new online payment portal, it has complicated things, and with new permits from the state, that has also complicated things, so it's gonna take her even longer to get all the permits out this year, just because of all the different things that she's having to do,
Okay.
So, but the, invoices that we send out are really only a courtesy. Everybody's supposed to
Sorry, this
renew
is
their
for
permit
restaurant?
every year.
Okay.
For restaurants,
For
for all of
rentals.
our, for all of our, fiscal year permits, so it's a fiscal year.
On the short-term rentals, is it an annual
Yes,
permit? Okay.
yeah, they had a one-time, plan review fee that we waived for a while, and then an annual permit. fee.
Right, okay.
So yeah, so we're working on that. Savannah attended a couple trainings last month, so, and some of that, she took her CPO, so to help out with the pools whenever we need her to. Plus, if she stays on after her 2-year grant period, she'll have all the training that she needs. Because she is our position that is funded by the grant right now. So, and she also took our SAVA course, which is self-assessment verification audit for the, she's going to be working a little bit more on the food program standards with me. That's part of the grant that she was hired for, so.
Explain quickly the difference between what we're trying to achieve here in the county and what the state has recently passed.
What do you mean?
Is there any incongruence
No.
between the food standards, the federal food standards for 24 and the state food standards or anything like that?
Oh, what there is, you're talking about the FDA food code?
Yes.
So the state is working on passing the most recent version of the FDA food code, which just passed, or was just finally came out earlier this year. Or I don't know if they made it by the end of last year, but anyway, it was delayed because of COVID. So there is a new version of the FDA food code, the national food code that, right now we're on the 2013 version of the food code. So the state's trying to adopt the newer version, which we'll all have to follow, but it's part of meeting the standards, but the state also does their own regulations with the exceptions that legislators have passed, so that we can't require in the food that are in the.
So you're waiting for legislative? action
Well,
on it?
they're trying to pass this by next year, the food code.
The state
Mhm.
is, yeah,
The
well, they're at a
state is,
session now,
yeah.
so.
But the state's also been working on their program standards, and they meet all 9 standards, which is what we're trying to achieve. And the state also has large grants to involve. They're trying to get other health departments on board. I think right now there's 4 or 5 jurisdictions that are enrolled in the program standards in West Virginia, so.
So you're a year or two ahead of
Oh, yeah.
the other departments on that.
Any questions for Gillian?
So will these food standards be the 2022 or is it?
So I think it was the 2022 FDA food code. Yeah, that's the one that they're trying to adopt.
So the adopting comes from the legislature or from the state health department?
So the state puts it up to the legislature. It does, it has to be approved through the legislature.
So
Because
that-
it goes through a state rule, so it's just them amending their state rule to adopt the new food code with some exceptions.
So that really wouldn't happen now until next year anyway.
Right. That's gonna be next legislative session that they try and do that.
So what changes? I mean, food is food. Why would code need to change?
Because people learn things all the time, science.
Chemicals.
Yeah. There's just different things, and sometimes things become less restrictive and sometimes they become more restrictive. I haven't really familiarized myself with all the changes in the 2022 food code, but one thing that changed is they did add another allergen to the major allergens that need to be identified in restaurants too, when you're serving food, so sesame has been identified as a major allergen now, so that's been added to the 2022 code, so.
Gotcha.
We eat
Okay.
bugs powders now.
I don't.
I'll read your label carefully.
I would.
But
Yeah.
I can imagine that, like temperature standards for certain foods can be lowered or raised based upon new science and
Yeah,
that
they
it holds
like
better
the
at this
hot
temperature or
holding
that.
temperature Actually
Exactly.
used to be required to be 140 or higher, but several years ago, they dropped that down to 135 or higher when they discovered that that was a high enough temperature to actually keep bacteria from growing, so.
Gotcha.
So it's usually science-based, that's why they change the regulation.
Cool, thank you.
Threat preparedness?
So no threat preparedness officer, he is enjoying himself.
Increase.
But he did however go to
Wow.
a big threat preparedness and hurricane I believe it was hurricane.
I was gonna say, if you said add this,
Preparedness
we have
in-
to have a conversation.
So he went from New Orleans
Okay.
directly to Greece. So, so he's had a grand 2 weeks. Now, the New Orleans part was a job, it was work and he was working, they were doing 8 to 9 to 10 hour work days, but it was still in New Orleans. So
I was gonna say, I had to work in New Orleans before,
it's not terrible.
yeah, you get a lot less sleep.
Yes, so I'm sure he had a good time. He's a 24-year-old man. I'm sure it was a good time for him. One of the things I wanted to show you, and I don't know if you guys can take a few minutes, not now, but some other time, and see if any of these items that we have in this activities report give you any type of clarification, give you any type of information that you find useful to understand what's going on a month-to-month basis here. And then I also have, we're going to do a 6-month running average. Right now, we've only had 4 months of very more precise information than what we were used to be doing. So
Great.
so once we get to 6 months, then I think you can see a little bit more of the workflow and how it ebbs and flows over the course of the months and throughout the year. So just let me know if you say, oh, this is not important to us. These things are, can we get a, hone in on these things? If you can, then we can do that.
I'm a stat wonk. I love this.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
So prep, he was in New Orleans.
All right, so then we're gonna, I guess, clinical, well,
So I can do the next 3 items. So the clinical services, you have that list of the different services provided. The COVID vaccines have, as pretty much elsewhere in the country, finished almost on,
Thanks, God.
And then epidemiology report, if you have the slide.
Yep, so it's on the taskbar. Exit full screen, yeah, see these young people, they know. how to use all these
Right.
tools.
Is our epidemiologist?
There it is, go all the way to the front, all the way to the top.
Is our epidemiologist still with us? or-
Yes, she's just out today.
Okay.
And you want to go to slideshow? No, go to view,
Okay.
slideshow. And this is Google Slides, so it's a little bit different. Here we go.
And next. So respiratory virus is next. As you can see, the blue is influenza that has dropped off. We have not had a second peak. RSV is also remaining low, and at this time of year, I think we will be out of the flu season, and the second peak influenza is almost always seasonal, although it can change, but we're probably done for the flu for this year. Next. This was just flu activity over the last 3 months. Next. And the positive test results. So there's still an occasional test result that shows positive, but it's hardly any in the state. Next. COVID. We're not done with COVID, but the activity remains low, is overall lower. Next. The community level next. This is the cases have been lower. The actual of this last month, we had, as far as number of new cases, we had just under 100 new cases for the county, which is much lower than we've had for a long time. This is, again, cases documented by laboratory tests as opposed to home tests. There's certainly a lot more going around, but cases that rise to the level of people feeling they need to go to a medical office to get tested are much less. Next. Hospitalized cases have also decreased for the first time, so it's under 10 cases between the two counties. Next. Opioids, I do not have anything new to report on that. We just leave it at this blank. Did not have many, we only had a couple of new reportable diseases, so we shouldn't have that slide. So the health officer report, a pretty stable month, still working with different members of the community trying to get the opioid referral program going. We have did have one person referred by law enforcement, and so we're building our connections with the treatment groups and providing some treatment here. We have an item that's going to be on the agenda, talked about a lot for years to come, just like the opioids and viruses is going to be the water pollution, specifically the PFAS, which people started to hear about, which is a chemical. Actually, it's several thousand different chemicals in that category.
Don't they call those forever chemicals?
So it's been coined a forever chemical because it when you get it in the system, and of course there are a bunch of different ones and they act differently, but in general, we talk about half-lives, which is how long it takes to get rid of half of it. So if we have a blood level of, let's say I have a blood level of 100, I'll just throw that out as a random number. If it's an opioid or something, it might be at the half level in so many hours or a day. With the PFAS, the half-life till the level goes down to half is 5 years. So that's pretty much forever. So another half, if you don't get any ingestion, so it would take 10 years to get to 25% of your initial. So that's long enough. How long it goes out of other systems, these are issues and they're different ones. So some get removed quicker, and there's lots of information on where this is and exactly what the physical dangers are. That's messier to try and prove than simply measuring a level. And you will probably see lots of ads by the liability injury, the different people on it. If you've been exposed to this, trying to figure out what's the actual, what we really know for sure and what we wonder about, that's going to remain a problem. So there's recently passed state legislation. So West Virginia is a big area for this because there was a Dow, I believe a Dow chemical plant in Parkersburg that had a high concentration in the land around it. And when they measured blood levels of a group of people, it was much higher than the rest of the nation would be. And so there's been a big cleanup effort and a lot of money spent by the company. So West Virginia's had to address this, and they did. The Geologic Survey did investigations at different water treatment plants to see what the levels were of the water coming in. And a number of the places with high level were in the eastern panhandle, so this is gonna be one of the first areas they look at gathering more information and figuring out how to treat it. There are ways to treat it with all sorts of different methods, but of course, they don't come cheap. So the recently passed state legislation is going to be measuring these levels, I think quarterly at these plants, but also looking at the sources where this water comes from. So various companies will have to provide accounting of whether they have certain chemicals on site. So that's going to be an ongoing thing.
Is Eastern Panhandle, is it because there's stuff upstream coming down here or from residual old industrial here?
So I don't know the answer to that, and that's going to be a big thing as
Let's
this
try to.
data is gathered. So you know, which companies have what, and it's going to be what they have, you know, not the last 40 years, but a more immediate time frame. So there will be lots of questions, and though the local health department is not directly involved, that's the Division of Environmental Health. We will get asked a lot, and we want to know, because part of our charter, if it would, on the law is to, you know, be aware of community health issues, and be involved in community partnerships and things. So that so what that takes, I don't know. So we were asked if we're interested in participating with an EPA grant that's going to be monitoring. Then so the state is applying for this, and they will have other groups involved. I think like West Virginia Rivers Association, and they're going to want partners from the Eastern Panhandle. I've said we're interested in talking. We did not make any commitments, but you know, we certainly can be involved. Not from a regulatory standpoint, right? We don't have that authority. We don't have the equipment. If the commissioner of health for the state would say that's a requirement, and sir,
We're out.
you know,
Are we out or we have to?
no, I mean, if he'd
We'd have
say
to
it's a
comply.
requirement, then we'd have to figure that out, but that I don't expect that to happen. That's a different technology.
Mhm.
So,
And give us some money.
Not
I have a question
Yes,
when you're done.
Unfunded.
level.
So maybe I missed it. Did they identify what type of chemical it is in the water?
there are a number of different ones, and so there's a geologic survey report. Of course, they're just right up the street here in Leetown, but there are a number of different ones, and so the state law, I believe, is going to look at 4 different ones, again, of several thousand types that there's the most information on.
But it's collectively called the PFAS, which is like polyfluoral.
PFAS or PFAS. depending on
Sorry,
the-
I say PFAS. Tomatoes.
Polyfluoro, there are many fluorine
Polyfluoral.
atoms on an alkyl, which is a carbon chain, and then they have the end of that chain. And any other molecule they want to put on there, and these will make this affect the surface tension of the water, so it's used in various things like stain repellents on clothes, there's Teflon, foam firefighting equipment. Yes,
Is one of them PCB? Is what I understand is that's kind of lying in the, on the bottom of the river, the
I
Shenandoah.
don't think it's PCB, but these will persist in the water
Different.
and be part of the food chain. So just the algae eats some, and then something eats them and gets all they've concentrated in their body. And so by the time you get to the same with mercury, by the time you get to the swordfish, you got more mercury. So this becomes an issue.
Constantly being talked.
But we all have some in our body, and like so many chemicals, at what point it's actually harmful is really hard to figure out. It's been detected in rainwater all over the world. It's been detected at the base camp of Mount Everest. So it does get into the rain. So it's here. It's just something we need to pay attention to, but try and learn the facts so we're not panicking about it.
One more question, I'm so sorry, maybe Julian's probably more familiar with this, probably not too.
Speak up.
I know the state of water has been tested, so we see, but for the well, we don't test them, right? The homeowner is up to them to test their own water.
Yeah,
So-
we only do water testing basically when it's requested for refinancing a house or possibly for occupancy, possibly for a foster care situation. That's pretty much the only time that we actually go and collect a water sample, or if there is somebody diagnosed with E. coli and we're trying to find the source of that, we'll collect a water sample.
And what is it collected for?
So those water samples, we bring them to the lab here and they only do testing for total coliforms and E. coli. So that's the only testing that they do here. They don't do any chemical testing. So chemical testings, if somebody wanted to have that done from their water well, they would have to get a sample and send it to a private lab or have a private lab come out and take a sample.
So my concern is like when they start flagging the river, so at what point we're gonna notify people who have well water to test their water?
That'll
wait
be
for the
something
state?
that comes, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and since we do have some role in regulating well water and waste systems, and that's a fair amount of the county. That's going to come up because it's one thing to say we have 15 water treatment plants that need to be adding filtration. But then the next question says, what technology, what vendor? Is it garbage or is it actually good technology? How do you know it's working? To then do the same for thousands of well people such as myself, I'd have the exact same questions, how do I get it tested? How do I get it tested?
And I think there's still
What do I do?
developing testing.
Yeah, so this is,
these
this is gonna be
systems, so.
evolving and say, well, I'll just go buy bottled water. Has this bottled water been tested? And so yes, there have been some. So all of these questions, so don't, if you rush to the internet, go to Wikipedia and learn about it first before you then get the stuff someone's chosen for you to read.
It is so
Not that
sad.
Wiki's the most accurate either, but yeah,
I was just thinking
No,
that to
Wick is
myself.
the worst.
it can be. But just to try to get a broad and, not something alarmist at this point. We're not
And this is,
sure yet.
this is one class of many millions of things that we're ingesting.
Unfortunately, welcome to the modern world.
What a cheerful.
So it's, we
It's important to know.
recognize this is an issue and we're trying to keep some sanity in the response.
That's
Love
how we
it.
evolve. It's okay. Our body is amazing.
That's it.
Thank you. All right, Administrator.
All right, so fun times, some really good news. First of all, broadband is in. We are now running off fiber. It only took 15 months or 14 months, so we're good there. So-
Let's see, what's the network name?
This is hardwire only.
Yeah,
This
that's
is through the
not
state
for-
secure network.
Oh.
So we're running at 7.5
Oh.
megabits per second. We're now running at 100.
Oh.
And we also know that it's broadband or that it's fiber because we're uploading at the same speed at 100. As opposed to like cable, which we've been uploading at about 15. So
Wow.
it's a really incredible service. It's noticeable. It's going to allow us to access a lot of features from our cloud software that we haven't been able to because it's just ran too slow. and you just couldn't access it because of those reasons. So hopefully we'll be able to get more out of our current software systems that are cloud-based. And I think we will, but we'll have to have some trainings and learn about them and train the staff to be able to access all the new tools that they will now have the ability to get to. So well, what are we really here for? We're here for the budget, right?
Budget.
So we're here for the
Stop holding
budget.
back, man.
So the budget,
Blah, blah.
yeah, the broadband's great though. 'cause
Yeah,
It really
okay,
helps,
yeah,
it
yeah,
really
yeah.
helps with
Money,
with
money.
productivity. So they voted for it. They voted in favor of that. Go ahead and bring up my fun little bit here. This will not be long. I have a little slideshow here. Scroll on down. Right there where it says 15.
Want to do a public comment?
That's what I'm gonna just add it on.
Go to 15.
Got it.
View it, slideshow it. So what we're talking about here is fiscal year 2024 budget proposal. This is the third time. This is the third iteration, but we are fairly close to the final numbers. I don't have all of the numbers in yet, but I have the major numbers in. Okay, so go ahead to the next one. First of all, I do want to do a quick trend report. I want to let everybody know, those who have been here longer, Brandon unfortunately is not here, but for those who've been here longer, you know that revenue is cyclical and it usually arrives at the end of the fiscal year. You can see the big spike there, and on the monthly average, you can see that. Next one. Clinical revenue is a lot more stable. You can see it's generally between about $5,000 to $10,000 to $20,000 a month. You do occasionally at the end of the year, as we lead into the school year, you do sometimes have a bit of a bump for school vaccinations and things like that going into the next school year. Go ahead. Revenue is really driven on the environmental side, but also by state aid, because the way state aid comes in at 33.5% for the final check we get. The final quarterly check is 33.5%, as opposed to the first check, which is 20%. It goes 20, 22.5, 27.5, 33.5. And then a little bit of a bonus check at the end of the year, what the state calls the fifth quarter, which is a reimbursement of emergency funds for this fiscal year. So, but you can see typically the big month is April, May, June for the environmental side. And you can see the average peaks at April and continues to be strong through May and then into June compared to the previous months. You do have a little bit of a bump in October and November, and there's a reason for that, Gillian, I forget why. Some type of annual as opposed to calendar, as opposed to fiscal year billing. There's
We do have calendar year permits as well that are billed around that time.
usually October, November. So you have a little bit of a bump there in the average. Next. Expenses, as you can see, really pretty much run in a very tight window. They do not really fluctuate much. So as you all know, you can run a negative for a year, all the way until March or April sometimes, and then the last 2 months it really blow through the roof.
We've been
Next.
seeing that with the financial. report.
Correct. Well, this is a different year than previous years. This year is a little different. I'll explain to you why.
Okay.
So this is the 5-year fiscal comparison. We had revenue in blue, we have expenses in orange, and you can see that started changing when Gillian took over as the acting administrator, and then in the fiscal year the first fiscal year that I was here, there's a big change. We're now running small, very small surpluses, which is where we should be. We should be running a zero balance, or we should be running a slight surplus. That's really maybe a minor deficit, but very minor. But previous to that, we were running 6-figure deficits. So go ahead and go to the next one.
On a question regarding that, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No interruption. Go ahead.
But when you went before the county commission, what do you think was their take on restoring the funding?
So we're about to go there.
Okay.
So I have the updated fiscal year 24 budget proposal with a new line item in income and revenue. Jefferson County revenue is $106,186 for the fiscal year coming
Well
up.
done, Gina.
Thank you.
Well done.
So thank you to the county
It's
commission.
still, it's
We'll give it,
still not up to
It is.
previous.
yes, it's, I'll be honest, it's much more than I'd expected. I was thinking-
We
Don't
literally
put that
went from
in
0 to
the
100.
Yes, so, but we did go from 0 to $106,000. So that doesn't mean we can't ask for a little bit more later, but now welcome back into Jefferson County. You now have skin in the game again.
Okay, great.
So. Couple things I have up here, and I would
And
need
they
my
also
glasses to be
fund-
able to read these, but
They fund our utilities and the space.
Right.
So that's also what they have been funding.
You don't have,
That's
what you
good.
don't have on your thing is my notes. But I included them on the PowerPoint, which I'll send the PowerPoint to you after the meeting
Okay.
today.
Great.
One of the things you need to know is right here on the fiscal year 2023 updated budget versus 2023 approved. What you approved last year was this with an incredible amount of money in the grant section. Well, I had to make some changes because we're not billing that COVID grant like we used to. In fact, we've only billed it once this fiscal year. But what we didn't have last year, or we didn't have in there, was the NEHA grant. And we didn't have the updated state aid. So that was about $50,000 more. So I've made those changes and changed, we had changed between Charlie and I, we had changed our budget expectation for this year. The total number is essentially the same, the expectation at the end of the year. So one of the things that I have included now in the proposal is the NEHA grants, the new state aid, the new state aid, which is $51,000 more, and then the county aid, okay? I'm also being very, very careful on revenue expectations. I'm lowering this number here, the expected clinical services revenue to the 5-year previous 5-year average, as opposed to saying I expect it to be in line with what we did in 2022, which is very much an anomaly. I don't think we're going to be anywhere near $285,000 or $303,000. So I lowered that down to roughly $225,000. That's probably more in line with what we'll earn. I also, we're receiving a lot less of these grants. This particular line item here, the other donations, interest rebates, small grants, those will be your little like less than $10,000 grants or $20,000 grants. But it'll also include donations from any county government agencies that may donate to us. And it also includes rebates and using the P card and the P card rebates and reimbursements and things like that. So, and I did that also with a 5-year average because we're not hitting these numbers here. We're be more in line with what we've done in the previous fiscal years prior to COVID, I think. So I didn't want to overestimate those numbers. Second line you get to is expenses. This is a great question for you guys because in May, as we all know, the state passed an across the board increase for permanent staffs that are covered by the Division of Personnel. So I wanted to put that in there. That is actually in that number right there, the $1,088,000, and also includes a non-state agency increase of 15.6% on PEIA. So all of our employees that are covered by PEIA, it's going to includes that also. So I also wanted to make sure our operating expenditures were properly accounted for. So I went back and did the same thing as I did in the revenue sections, which was to provide a 5-year average from the previous fiscal year, from the previous 5 fiscal years, to make sure that we have a better idea of those numbers too, and try not to underestimate them.
Thank you.
So I'm predicting roughly about a $40,000 surplus for fiscal year 24. I think we'll probably hit that. And a lot of that is due to the increase in state aid, but also the increase in county aid. Otherwise, we'd probably be running about a $70,000 expected deficit next year. So it was nice that the state was able to pick up a little bit more, and that's based upon population adjustments. And then, of course, with the county aid, that helps a tremendous amount.
Is the county aid in there?
The county aid is in there. It's the second revenue line item now. So it's in there.
Do you
And
know how they came up with that number?
I do not know. I did not see the sausage being made. I
Don't know.
was
Just keep the money.
I was working. But I was trying to listen.
I thought maybe we already knew.
No, I don't know.
Don't ask questions.
Yeah, that number was given to me by the deputy county administrator when I asked. She says, I do finally have that number for you. And
Did
she-
their
she
budget
sent it
get-
to me?
Do we know if their budget got submitted?
It did.
It was submitted, so.
Yep.
It was.
Late, but it was.
It was submitted, so also I'm projecting right now about a $65,000 budget surplus for this year. I don't want to, I'll cross my fingers, but I think it could be a good bit more than that.
I would.
It could be
So
a
does
good
the,
bit more than that.
overage from this year get pushed into next year's?
So it's still in the bank account.
Right.
It's just a continuing thing. So there might be a situation where we go into the future with a little bit of a pad. And having, maybe $100,000 or $200,000 quote unquote in the bank, where we could then maybe do some accounting technique to maybe pay off things going into the future.
Over and above our surplus.
Yes.
I mean, our over and above
Of our
our reserve.
A reserve amount, exactly.
So when you say we have around $65,000 surplus,
Mhm.
that is counted into the $100,000 deficit, right? So we still have about 35,000 deficit. Was that the
We've cleared
clear
that.
surplus?
We're beyond that. Yeah, we're beyond that now. There is no deficit.
No, he's
We're well above the reserve in the bank account. We're well above our reserve. By nearly $100,000.
I've been reading, so.
That's good. The big thing is. What do we do with this now? We want to make sure that we're responsible with the money, of course. And maybe committing some of this surplus to future anticipated spending before it gets. Well, it's actually a very good move to do that. So that way you defray future costs from it. But those are something that I'll be discussing with Charlie, and of course, I'll
I was
present
gonna
it.
say, we
I
don't
would-
need to do that until after the fiscal. year is
Absolutely.
complete. We actually know what needs in
Absolutely.
the bank.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what?
And I, of course, would bring that to you, and you guys would be completely knowledgeable about what's going on.
So what time, at what point is the budget proposal final?
Final will be the May meeting,
Okay.
and we'll vote on it then. I'll ask you to vote on it, and then
That's
there'll be
next-
some,
next
a
week.
little, yep, that'll be next meeting. There'll also be a request to vote on the across the board increase for the staff. That has already been figured into the budget. And that is not funded like it was a little bit funded last time, 5% from last year. That was slightly funded by the state. This is not funded by the state. So one of the requests by the Division of Personnel is we have to have knowledge of where that increase in salary will be coming from. And I'll say it's going to come from general funding.
Or the county.
Or yes, yeah, we could do it that
Which
way
is
too.
general, right? 'Cause
But that's
not-
all, that's going directly into the general. Another
Yeah.
nice thing about the county is it's not cyclical, it's not quarterly, it's monthly. So it'll give us a little bit more even income stream, which is very, very nice, as opposed to every
Yeah.
3 months getting a big check.
Right, lump sum.
So
So
Go ahead.
COVID is here to stay, so do you know they gonna continue in, like, as still new yet, as you don't consider it as a regular flu yet, so do you think they're gonna continue to fund it somewhat?
So as of next month, the emergency is discontinued at the federal level.
Yep.
So all the emergency funding will be discontinued. And almost all of our grants are gone now
Yep.
anyway. So it will be, and the cost for being vaccinated will no longer be free. It'll be just like anything else. You go to your doctor.
Treat like a flu
see-
now.
It will be, it'll probably be more expensive than the flu, but we don't even know that yet. So we hope it's gonna be down at the level of the flu. I'd rather it be less than that, at the level of the common cold, but so the funding won't be the large extent, and as long as the levels stay low, that we will continue to pay attention to it and offer them, whatever the best prevention and treatment is at that time, we'll continue to recommend that. But I suspect it's going to be a small part of our discussion going forward.
and COVID grants wrap up at the end of fiscal year 23. So this June 30th, they're done. Some agencies have requested an extension. I think they've been granted it, but we haven't because we've really not been billing it.
There gotta be some kind of study in the federal or even nationwide level, like NIH, and we still have to study it, don't we? But that's not gonna
Oh,
trickle
there's
down to the.
all sorts of people that it has not stopped as far as their interest. But as far as the services we provide, the biggest question for me is for uninsured or underinsured, who are vulnerable. Is there gonna be ability for them to get the vaccines?
Wouldn't that be
at,
covered by
low cost?
Medicaid?
Excuse me,
Wouldn't that be covered by Medicaid and Medicare, if anything else? would?
if they have insurance, yeah.
Yeah.
And so the,
They do.
but yes, most of the older people are, but there are a fair number of people over 50 or 60 who are not yet retired by Medicaid. They may have low income, no insurance, but.
We take that down.
Yep,
So.
go right back to the
so
regular.
What I'd like to do is open up for public comment, but since we had a bit of a technical glitch.
Absolutely.
So is there, if there's anybody that would like to participate in public comment, since we had a bit of a technical issue this earlier in the meeting. Go ahead and raise your hand or put a note in the chat box. I'd like to honor that opportunity. Just give it a second, awkward silence. I can do a hand puppet show.
So Caleb is the new staff member with the Spirit.
Okay,
Oh.
thank you.
So it's not Tim Cook that wanted.
Okay, it doesn't seem like anybody's looking for public comment, so I think we're actually at the end of the agenda. Our next meeting is May 12th, which will be the budget
Final budget
vote. Sorry, I'm showing my bias. So we'll see everybody next month. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you guys, great work.
Hold on. See you, Nathan.
Bye, Nathan.
Stop recording.
Fine,
Good to see you.
yes.